Welcome along to another episode of the Make It Count podcast. It's great to be here. My name is David,
And I'm Matt,
and yeah, we are the Taylor
Taylor
Bros.
Bros.
Yeah, we like to make it count. And today, what are we talking about today, Matt?
We are talking about spring and the lengthening of days, or the lengthening days of spring, depending on if you're Yoda or not.
Yeah, so what got you thinking about that?
What got me thinking about it was the fact that you put it in our list. So
I don't
that's
think I did. I thought you put it in with a couple of articles.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, great. What got me thinking about it? Well, we're in spring and the days are getting longer. And a few weeks ago, we recorded an episode kind of about like winter walks and making the most of getting outside even in the depths of winter. And actually, a year ago, episode 17, we did an interesting episode on do the seasons even matter anymore? And recommend going back and listening to that after you've finished listening up to this one. See how our thoughts have maybe progressed a little bit or whether they haven't, and whether it's just we're regurgitating the same spiel again and again. But that was generally it. We're in we're getting out of winter. I've always discovered that winter is a bit of a time to endure after you get through the Christmas season and the New Year's excitement. January and the most part of February is a little bit like a endure. And so now you look forward to spring, the lengthening of the daylight, the warmer, the things that you get to do outside more.
Yeah, and that's interesting because we've obviously both spent some time nearer the equator for some significant amount of time, for a number of years, really, where the sun comes up about 6 a.m. and goes down about 6 p.m. more or less every day, all year round. Whereas now we live in the UK, even the southern part of the UK, there's a much bigger range across the year, and seasons look different in different places. So for us, there are roughly 4 equalish seasons, which affect how we view the world, but also how we experience it. Like you said, there's that feeling of winter when the days get shorter and the light becomes a shorter amount of time, when it draws in and there's a coziness. But spring is like the opposite. It's like a breath, and it fills out and it's getting longer, and it's like new life is coming. But I suppose, and that idea of new life, I thought as I was thinking about this, was really significant, because maybe if you've never lived this far north, or maybe if you live even further north, there's a more extreme version of this. But if some days in the winter in England, it feels like it's dark at 3:30.
Yeah,
Well, then if you don't go to bed till 9 or 9 p.m., which is still relatively early, that's still 6 hours of darkness that you've been awake through. It
yeah,
just feels like this long time, and your entire, you're working. Most people that work a regular sort of time during, the 9 to 5, the 8 till 4-ish, they didn't see any light outside of that time, and most of that time was probably inside. So it feels like you're in this darkness all the time, and suddenly this time of year comes around, and oh, it's light when I get home. Oh, maybe there's something else I can do. Oh, if I
yeah,
stay awake for 6 more hours after it gets dark, it's 10, 11, midnight, sort of much
sure.
later. So it just breathes this new life in. And I just thought that was quite interesting to think about in those ways, and make clear for anybody that is listening internationally, it's a really significant thing. At the moment, we're getting about 30 minutes more light a week.
Yeah, than like the previous week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing. And I didn't actually look it up for exactly our region, but one of the articles I was reading when I was looking about this, they were saying, based in Michigan, which is north in the US, they get roughly, what was it? The shortest day they get like 9 hours of daylight, and the longest day they get something like 15. So they get 6 hours more daylight on the longest day than the shortest day. So it's just quite a lot. And the sun is coming up a couple of hours earlier and obviously setting much later. And so what do you do with that extra time? And partly it's great, just enjoy that extra daytime. And it's one of the things we commented about and we talked about in that episode last year. Do the seasons even matter? Because we have the advent of artificial lighting. I mean, that's been around since fire, but it's much easier and safer indoors with electrical lighting, and you can just flip up the switch. I don't have to spend any time lighting a fire. You just put it on, and now I'm in the light again. So it's dark outside, and of course, no matter how bright well, unless you're crazy, but no matter how bright your lights are inside, they're not as bright as the sun. And so there is still an effect, but we have managed to almost lengthen the day. But as the days naturally lengthen, so how do we want to make it count? How do we make the most of that?
Well, and that's interesting as well, isn't it? Because I think there's just naturally, somehow there's a relationship between the light we experience and the life and energy we have. Many people talk about seasonal affective disorder and that idea of like darkness, it dampens me. And so actually coming home and there's still like an hour of light, so much to do. I could go and do this and that, and we're related to that. And people talk about when you wake up in the morning, one of the first things you can do is get some natural light, or just get some light, and that wakes your body up. The hormonal and physiological responses wake you up. Actually, something you know this, but probably for about a year now, I've been using a sort of a light alarm. So you set the alarm at 6 a.m., for example. Well, half an hour before that, it just starts getting lighter. And then over the course of the 30 minutes leading up to that, it just gets brighter and brighter and brighter, sort of simulating a sunrise. And then you can choose a number of different noises that it wakes you up to with a bit of noise. But I've just gone for some light, birds tweeting. It was about 2 weeks ago. The light was on. And then there were some other birds like tweeting. So I woke up straight away, but it was like 15 minutes before the actual alarm was going to go off. And I was suddenly really worried that birds tweeting is going to I've made that association, just be awake whenever the birds are tweeting.
How
and
funny.
then in the summer, that starts at like 3:30, 4:30 in the morning. So I'm, a bit anxious about that now. I don't know what I've set myself up for.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. You might want to reassess your alarm choices there, because as much as it's nice, you don't want to be constantly waking up in the middle of the night. That's really interesting. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about the lengthening of the days is no longer are you the alarm goes off, you wake up and you look outside, it's dark, and it just feels difficult, and it almost feels unnatural. Interestingly enough, almost feels like, well, the best thing to do is to stay in bed until it's light. What can you do? But you have to turn the light because I've got to get into the office at this time, or I've got to start at this time. And so regardless of what the world is doing, we have artificially created these schedules. So yeah, interesting. I wonder how that might look if we were to kind of be a little bit more, again, with those seasons, like let the days shrink in the winter and lengthen in the summer. Maybe that would be interesting. I don't know, but who knows? But one of the things everybody seemed to say, as you look into this at all and all these articles, and everybody is basically going, well, make the most of it by getting outside. Get outside, get into the garden, go for a walk, eat outside. I think that's maybe a little bit early for eating outside. Even we're recording this sort of early to middle of March. It will come out sort of late March, I think, and it might still be a little bit chilly to be eating outside, unless you've got a quick lunch and you don't mind wrapping up warm. But that might still be, a nice thing to do. And it's one of my favorite things to do in the office. There's a nice, where I work, there's a little garden, there's some picnic benches. And when it is sunny, even if it's a little bit chilly, if it's sunny, I'm loving it. I get outside, stick a coat on, get outside, and it just feels way better. And there was a study done, I think back in 2019, it was published in Nature Journal. And it's not really groundbreaking at all, but they basically found that even just 2 hours a week of time in nature or natural surroundings, green spaces, is associated with much better, likelihood of being in good general health and well-being. And of course, in the winter, in the cold, in the dark, that can be hard to get, because you go, well, most of the daylight hours are spent in what for most people are their working hours. So you're stuck inside, So how do I get that 2 hours? It's spread across the week. So maybe I do that on the weekend or something. But in the spring and in the summer, it's so much easier to get that because you can, I just go outside for a half an hour lunch. If you do that every day, you've already done your 2 hours. You've already got that 2 hours, and so those experiences of getting outside, you feel brighter, you feel more engaged, you feel maybe more connected to the world, to the natural world. So what do you think of that, David?
Yeah, I mean, definitely nature plays a role in waking us up. There's something about being outside and being connected to those things that do bring us life, and we should probably learn to take advantage of that. I'm sure that there have been, like you said, various studies of just actually being out in nature really being good for our emotional well-being and our emotional health, as well as and so to try to do that in the dark feels like when it is dark outside, that's a fight. And I don't know if it still has the same relationship, but yeah, there's just something about going out when the sun is bright, and that brings a bit more energy, a bit more life, and a bit more vibrancy. And I suppose it's making me think of some of the stuff that Michael Gervais talks about. He's a sports psychologist, and he talks about relationships. He said, "Well, what relationship do you have with yourself, with your world, with your surroundings, and with other people?" And he said, we talk about high performance, and sleep really important for high performance. Yeah, how you eat, how you train, how you live, what you think about, psychological skills, but also relationships. And in that, he said, relationship with self, relationship with others, and relationship with the surrounding, with the world, with nature. And so I wonder, have we we talked about this a little bit before as well, this idea of the enlightenment, that we're like brains on legs, as it were, that actually we've lost the fact that we actually embody a physical world. We are in a physical world, and that world is growing, and it's got beautiful trees and flowers and birds and animals and nature, that actually something about us comes alive when we're in those spaces.
Absolutely. I think because it's not just well, I wonder about this because what would it be like to do the same in the winter when it is darker? Is it just about the visual, or is it about all of the things, the audible and the feel, the air and the smells as well? It's more than just looking at some green, although we did speak about in a fairly recent episode the effect of just seeing natural pictures can still have positive effects. It doesn't have to be even real trees. It could just be pictures of trees and mountains and stuff. So that's an interesting, maybe a little life hack. You can still make yourself feel better by just looking at some pictures.
But that was to jump in on that briefly, I don't know if we talked about this here, but I remember hearing about those. There was some famous like apartment blocks really in Chicago, and some of them looked out over the park, some of them looked at just like other concrete bits, some looked down on the car park, and they were there for like a number of years, and they realized that the ones that overlooked nature had significantly better like emotional well-being than the ones that were in other spaces. So it's actually maybe not even like you said about actually having to go out. It's just what you can see from your window from being there, even can have a positive effect.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I in my home office I don't have a window in front of me. I have a frosted window to my right, which is a brick wall on the other side of it. And so I literally have got some pictures of like, mountains and forests and stuff just to make me feel like, oh yeah, there is goodness and life and beauty in this world. I'm just staring at a wall. But in my office, the office block I go to half the week, I have this quite nice view out over the village square. You've got, the church tower. You can often see birds flying around and some treetops and some hills in the distance. And I've blocked the street view with my screen so I don't get distracted by terrible parking and everything. But so and that also gives me a little bit of a local weather report. Oh, it's sunny, right? I'll just dash out for a quick walk around the square. Takes a couple of minutes and come back in, and I feel a bit more rejuvenated. If it's lashing it down with rain, like Yeah, I might just put that one off for, and enjoy the rain from inside.
Yeah. It's
I like the thing about linking those relationships. It's like Michael J. Vase was saying, actually, like, what's your relationship? Often we think immediately of just relationship with other people, but relationship with the natural world, relationship even with your own body. And it was interesting how, again, some of these articles you're talking about, the common theme amongst all of them really is just get outside. With spring is a time to open up it's almost, you picture winter is batten the hatches, close the heavy curtains, just weather it out. And then spring is we open it all up again. We open the windows, let some fresh air in. We may do some spring cleaning, clear out some of the old, let there be space and freshness, and literally get out into the space and freshness. And one article was definitely saying, it's like, also invest in relationships. So go outside, but with other people, go to an open cafe, or like go for a walk or a picnic or something. And again, like maybe really early doors in spring, picnics might be a bit of a for the hardcore picnic people amongst us who really love it. But for there's so many things that we can be doing, and just a little bit of imagination. One was saying, get down to your local farmers market, get out and garden. Those who love green fingers and stuff. And I just love that idea of what maybe a question would be like, how can I make, or how can I breathe life into my daily and weekly rhythms through the embracing the renewal and the rejuvenation of spring.
Mm. And there's something about, like, spring is in the UK a time where things start to come to life. They get greener, they're flowering, they're growing. The stuff that's happened through the winter in these plants is now going into the next stage. And there's something about us as well. It's like, oh, the days are getting longer. I want to grow. I want to develop. Maybe I want to start something new. We always start with like New Year's resolutions in the dead of winter. And I do sometimes wonder, that's probably not the best time to start. Like, the world is going, don't start anything now. Hibernate, be cozy, be warm, be inside. But actually, spring comes and it feels like just so much of a better time to start something.
Yeah.
And that's what the world is doing, and that's what we're doing. And I suppose another thought I was having, even as you were speaking, is just this idea of being present. We talk about being present, and we can be in nature, but we cannot be present to it. And I think we can be thinking about something else. And maybe there are still some positive benefits, but I think there's something to bringing your mind to where your body is, especially when you're in nature. And maybe that isn't just, well, maybe that it helps to tune in your other senses. So have we walked and just listened to the place? I remember, it probably was during the pandemic sort of lockdowns in the UK, and we were allowed like out a little bit, but not very much, and going on walks. And I remember over time realizing that where the birds were loudest.
Yeah.
I'd lived there for however many years before, but it wasn't until that time when I was intentionally like, oh, well, I need to go outside because I haven't been outside and I want to go for walks and it's nice weather, that I realized that, oh, that's where they're loudest. That's where the trees are thickest. That's where what's going on. And there was something about just being present in that space that even pulled me out of my internal sort of, meanderings of my thoughts and musings. But actually, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, they're really loud over here. I wonder why that is. I never figured that one out.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And for those that are interested, again, like we did an episode back in a while back. I think it was episode 33 on listening and noise. I think that was where you talked about this idea of the world orchestra, and you definitely blogged about it in one of your blogs. And this idea of like, don't just let your ears be on autopilot and just forget that there's sound and there's noise which is disruptive, but there's almost, the world is creating music. Just live with your ears forward, let your ears lead you. And so, that's, in a sense, that's been a bit of a theme of this discussion, you getting woken up by bird song, but just that recognition of, as you go outside, as you go for those walks, or sit in the park with a picnic, or go to the farmer's market, don't just notice the sights and don't just notice maybe the smells in the market, but notice the sounds and see how rich that world is, that world of sound. Because I think that's a beautiful thing. And maybe even ask yourself, wonder what are the sounds of winter compared to the sounds of spring, and enjoy that. I think one of the last things I would say as we come to a close is a really fascinating thing that I'd never discovered, and I quite like these sort of things with words and etymologies. The term Lent. Lent comes from this old English word lengthen or something like that, and it literally just means lengthen or spring. And how the season of Lent is during that season of lengthening of days. And so again, that's from a spiritual perspective on life of like, what does it mean to make the most of this time of lengthening of days? And maybe it is a time of awaiting. That's traditionally what the time of Lent is, awaiting and with intention. How can we live with intention as we look forward to the renewing and the rebirth and all of those things that spring beckons?
Oh, definitely. I'd never realized that before, that sort of word Lent really basically means lengthen. So that is interesting. I don't know what to do with that new insight yet, but I'll meditate on that maybe later. So I suppose if we were summing this conversation up, because it has meandered a little bit, it's mused on a number of different things, but actually it's, as you say, notice the new life that is happening. Get out into nature because it's good for you.
Yeah. And also, I would just jump on what you were saying about the New Year's and the resolutions and the times. Like, if you started the year and you're like, I have this intention, I want it, and you felt like you've stalled, exactly as what you're saying. I think January and February can be just a really difficult time to try and get momentum and start something new. So I almost feel like maybe we should just like set March the 1st of March is the New Year's resolution day. Because it's so much more like, oh yeah, now the world is waking up and now is the time to start new endeavors. And so this is a great chance. Hop back in, and obviously you guys will be listening towards the end of March. So it really is now the time, take the encouragement, no matter what's happened, whether I've stalled or whether I was doing all right. This is a new burst, new time to start something and to go, what does it mean to get new life in this area of my life, or this endeavor that I've wanted to do for a long time, but maybe I haven't made the progress I was hoping for.
Definitely. So we hope you've enjoyed this. Let us know what your stories of nature and the lengthening days are. What do you do with all that extra time? We love hearing from you. But that's all for us for another week at the Make It Count podcast.
See you guys.